I watched a woman in pearls wrap a chain around my disabled wife's wheelchair, while our neighbors filmed it like a TV show. What none of us knew was that 2 black SUVs at the end of our street had been parked there for 6 days straight, and what was about to happen next would tear our entire neighborhood apart. Have you ever wondered what it really takes for the people who hurt you to finally face what they've done? The coffee mug hit the kitchen tile and broke into about 100 pieces, but I didn't even look down. I was already running. My wife Eleanor was crying outside, and not the soft kind of crying. The kind that sounds like something inside a person is tearing. My name is Daniel Hayes. I'm 46 years old, I work from home as an insurance adjuster, and for the last 3 years I've been the main caregiver for my wife, who has multiple sclerosis. Some mornings her legs work fine. Most mornings they don't. She uses a wheelchair, and we have a ramp built onto the side of our house so she can get out to our handicap-permitted van. That van is parked, and has always been parked, on a wide concrete pad beside our house, 3 feet inside our property line. I measured it myself. Twice. When I came around the corner of the house that morning, I saw a woman standing over my wife with a clipboard. Patricia Whitmore, president of our homeowners association. The kind of neighbor who measures grass with a ruler. The kind who wears pearls at 7 in the morning to argue with a sick woman in a bathrobe. Get away from her, I said. Patricia didn't even flinch. She tapped her pen on the clipboard like a teacher about to give a bad grade. Your vehicle is parked in violation of Community Code 14B, Daniel. I've already called for towing. Eleanor looked up at me. Her hair was tangled, her face was wet, and her hands were shaking in her lap. She'd come outside to grab a hat she'd left in the van. That's all. A blue knit hat, the one her sister made her last Christmas. Patricia, I said, keeping my voice calm because I knew that's what made her crazy. The variance for that parking pad has been approved since 2021. I have the paperwork in a file. I can show it to you in 2 minutes. She smiled. And here's the thing about Patricia Whitmore's smile, it never reached her eyes. Her eyes always stayed cold, like she was looking at a stain. The board voted last night, she said. Your variance has been revoked. So has your ramp permit. The ramp is coming down Thursday. I felt the ground tilt a little under my feet. You have to understand something about our street. We live in a quiet cul-de-sac in a development called Briarwood Estates. 28 houses. Manicured lawns. Mailboxes that all match. And for the past 2 years, ever since Patricia became board president, life here had slowly turned into something that felt less like a neighborhood and more like a small kingdom. There were fines for porch lights left on too late. Fines for kids' bikes in driveways. A retired teacher down the street had been fined $300 for planting the wrong kind of tomatoes in her front yard. People grumbled, but people paid. Nobody wanted to be the next target. We had been the next target for almost a year. Down at the end of the street, a tow truck was already turning onto our road. And behind the tow truck, 2 black SUVs I had never seen before were rolling along slowly. Slow enough that I noticed them. Slow enough that something inside me started ticking like a clock. But I didn't have time to think about the SUVs. I had to think about my wife. Eleanor, honey, go inside, I said softly. I've got this. Daniel, my pills are in the van, she whispered. Her voice cracked. My noon pills. The ones I can't miss. That's when Patricia did something I'll remember for the rest of my life. She reached into her tote bag, pulled out a heavy padlock and a length of bicycle chain, and walked right past my wife to our wheelchair ramp. She wrapped the chain around the railing of the ramp. Click. Click. The padlock snapped shut. Eleanor made a sound I've never heard from her before. Not a cry. Not a word. Just a small, broken noise that came out of her chest like the air going out of a balloon. You can't do that, I said. The ramp is an unapproved structural modification, Patricia replied, calm as Sunday morning. Until it's removed, it has to be secured. I looked at the chain. I looked at my wife sitting in her chair, her hat still inside the van that was about to be towed, her medicines still inside that van, and her own front door now blocked off by a stranger's padlock on her own property. A neighbor across the street, Mrs. Caldwell, was standing on her porch in her robe. She had her phone out. She was filming. Not helping. Filming. Another neighbor, 2 doors down, was actually laughing. I could hear him through the morning quiet. A short, mean laugh, like this was a show. I pulled out my own phone with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. I started to dial 911. I never finished dialing. Because one of those black SUVs had stopped at our curb. The driver's door opened. A woman in a dark suit stepped out and held up a badge that caught the morning sun like a piece of broken glass. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at Eleanor. She looked at Patricia, and she said 3 words. "Mrs. Whitmore? Step away from the chair." And Patricia Whitmore, for the first time in 8 years, went completely white. Before this gets even crazier, do me one favor. Tap that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to hear in the next act is the moment where this entire neighborhood's biggest secret comes crashing out into the open, and trust me, you do not want to find out what those black SUVs were really doing on our street 6 days before any of this started. The padlock was still warm in Patricia's hand. She hadn't let go of it. She was just standing there, frozen, holding a lock that no longer made any sense. The woman from the SUV walked across our lawn like she'd done it 100 times. Calm steps. No rush. She held the badge open until she was close enough for all of us to read it. Special Agent Renata Cole, FBI. 3 more agents climbed out of the second SUV behind her. One of them already had a camera out and was photographing the chain on our ramp. Another was photographing the tow truck, the van, and the license plate of the tow truck. The tow operator, a heavy-set man named Reggie who I'd seen around town for years, stopped what he was doing. His hands went up before anyone even asked him to put them up. "I'm just doing the job I was called for," he said quickly. "I got the work order right here in the truck." "Sir, please get the work order," Agent Cole said. "And please unhook that vehicle. Right now." Reggie nearly tripped over the tow chain trying to obey her. I knelt down next to Eleanor's chair. Her face was the color of paper. I put my hand over hers and felt how cold her fingers were. "Honey," I whispered, "I think we're okay. I think we're going to be okay." She didn't answer. She just stared at Patricia, who was slowly backing away from the ramp like the wood itself had caught fire. Agent Cole turned to Patricia next. Her voice didn't go up. It didn't go down. It stayed the same level, polite tone the whole time, and somehow that was scarier than yelling would have been. "Mrs. Whitmore, my name is Special Agent Renata Cole. We've been conducting a federal investigation into the financial activity of the Briarwood Estates Homeowners Association for 14 months. Your name appears on a number of documents we'd like to discuss with you. We have questions about contractor selection, fine collection, and a series of wire transfers connected to a company registered under your husband's name. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?" Patricia opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. "This is a misunderstanding," she said. "I'm enforcing community bylaws. That's all I'm doing here." "You're enforcing them very selectively," Agent Cole said. "We've noticed." I felt Eleanor's hand tighten around mine. Now I have to back up for a second, because I want you to understand how we got here. Not the FBI part. I'll get to that. The HOA part. 2 years ago, when Eleanor's MS got worse, we needed a wheelchair ramp built fast. Patricia, in her sweetest voice, came over with a folder of approved contractors. Every single one of them quoted us between $15,000 and $17,000 for a basic ramp. We're not rich people. I had to laugh out loud at the prices. Then a friend of mine from church told me about a nonprofit called Veterans Build, which puts together free or low-cost ramps for disabled folks if you cover the materials. I called them. They built our ramp in 2 weekends. Total cost? $3,400 in lumber and hardware. The veterans wouldn't even let me pay them for their labor. Patricia found out. And from that day forward, the fines started rolling in. Mailboxes the wrong shade of black. Garbage can visible from the street for 2 hours past pickup. Garden hose not properly stored. Window screen has a tear. By the end of year 1, we'd been fined over $4,000. We paid most of them, because fighting them cost more than paying them. But I'd been keeping every single notice in a folder. A thick folder. Color-coded. Dated. I'd also been keeping a folder on every other house on the street that had been fined in similar patterns. I had spreadsheets. I had a property map of the neighborhood I'd printed off the county website with each fined property highlighted. I'd also, 8 months earlier, filed a federal ADA complaint. I never told Eleanor. She had enough on her plate. I'd assumed nothing would come of it. The complaint had vanished into a government building somewhere, and never made another sound. Or so I thought. Agent Cole crouched down by Eleanor's wheelchair. Her whole face changed. The sharpness went out of it. She looked at my wife the way a doctor looks at a patient, gentle and full of attention. "Mrs. Hayes," she said softly, "I am so sorry for what just happened to you on your own property. I want you to know that we did not arrive here by accident. Your husband filed an ADA complaint last June. That complaint was assigned to our regional office. It connected to several other things we were already looking at. We've been parked at the end of this street for 6 days, gathering evidence." Eleanor's lips parted. She turned to look at me. "Daniel," she breathed. "You filed a complaint?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded. She didn't say anything. She squeezed my hand so hard her knuckles went white, and a single tear ran sideways across her cheek and disappeared into her hair. Behind us, Patricia was finally finding her voice. "I want my lawyer," she snapped. "I'm not saying another word until my lawyer is here." "That's your right, Mrs. Whitmore," Agent Cole said. "While you call him, we'll be cutting that chain off these folks' ramp, returning their van keys, and beginning a search of HOA records that's been authorized by a federal magistrate as of yesterday afternoon. Sergeant Ramirez here will read you a copy of the warrant if you'd like." Mrs. Caldwell, across the street, slowly lowered her phone. The man who'd been laughing wasn't laughing anymore. Up and down the cul-de-sac, front doors were opening, one after another, like the whole street had been holding its breath for 2 years and was finally letting it out at the same time. But here's the part nobody on that lawn knew yet, including me. Including Eleanor. Including Agent Cole, who only had pieces of it. This wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about contractor kickbacks or fines or selectively enforced rules. There was a third black SUV. I didn't see it until much later that afternoon. It was parked one street over, near the back of Patricia's own property line. And what those agents found in the locked shed behind her garage was something so far beyond a homeowners association scandal that when the news finally broke, it didn't just shake our neighborhood. It made the national papers. 2 days after the chain came off our ramp, I was sitting at my kitchen table with 3 federal agents and a lukewarm pot of coffee, and Agent Cole asked me a question I didn't expect. "Mr. Hayes," she said, "did Patricia Whitmore ever ask you for a list of your wife's medications?" I blinked. "What?" "Specifically. Did she ever ask, in writing or in person, what prescriptions your wife takes? What pharmacy you use? Anything along those lines?" I had to think about it. Eleanor was resting in the bedroom. She'd been sleeping more since the morning of the chain. The whole thing had drained something out of her that hadn't come back yet. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Last spring. She came over with a clipboard about emergency contact updates for the HOA. She said it was so first responders would know what to do if someone in the home had a medical event. She asked for medications, allergies, doctors' names, the whole thing. Eleanor filled it out. We thought it was a nice idea, honestly." We thanked her. The 3 agents looked at each other. Not in a panicked way. In a quiet, careful way that told me they had been hoping I wouldn't say yes. "Mr. Hayes," Agent Cole said, "we need to take you somewhere this afternoon. Just for an hour. Eleanor is welcome to come or stay, whichever is easier for her. There's something we need to show you." That afternoon, I sat in a small conference room at the FBI's regional field office, 2 towns over, staring at a corkboard covered in photographs and papers. There were 11 names on that board. 11 faces. 8 women, 3 men. All of them disabled or elderly. All of them from neighborhoods Patricia Whitmore's husband, Gerald Whitmore, did business in. Gerald, it turned out, was the one with the real operation. Patricia was the front of the house. Gerald was the back. He ran a shell company that subcontracted home modifications, ramp work, walk-in tubs, stair lifts, that whole industry. But here's where the story took a sharp left turn. For at least 6 years, Gerald had been targeting elderly and disabled homeowners across 3 counties. Patricia would soften them up first by getting their medical information through the HOAs she helped run or advised. Then Gerald's company would cold call those same people, claimed to be sent by their insurance, and pressure them into signing contracts for unnecessary or massively overpriced modifications. Some people paid $40,000 for a ramp that should have cost $6. Others were tricked into signing documents that, buried deep inside, gave Gerald liens on their houses. 2 of the 11 people on that corkboard had lost their homes. 2 of them. I sat there in that conference room and I felt sick. Not angry. Sick. Because Eleanor had given that woman a list of her pills with a thank you and a smile, and we were almost the next house with a lien on it. "Why are you showing me this?" I finally asked. Agent Cole sat down across from me. "Because you've been keeping records, Mr. Hayes. Very good records. We'd like your permission to use them. And we'd like your help reaching out to some of these other families. Most of them stopped trusting authority a long time ago. They might trust another victim, especially one who got out before it got worse." I looked at the 11 faces on that board, and I thought about the laughing neighbor. I thought about Mrs. Caldwell with her phone. I thought about the casseroles that had never come, the get-well cards that had never been sent, the 2 years of being treated like an inconvenience on our own street, while my wife slowly got sicker. And I thought about Eleanor, in our bedroom right now, sleeping with her hands curled up under her chin like a child. "Whatever you need," I told Agent Cole. "Whatever you need from me, you have it." When I drove home that night, the cul-de-sac was quiet. Patricia's house had a federal seal on the front door. Her car was gone. Gerald's truck was gone. Yellow tape ran across the back gate of their property where the shed had been. But here's what I didn't expect. Walter Brennan was sitting on my porch. Walter was 78 years old. He'd lived on our street longer than anyone. His wife Margaret had passed away 3 years ago after a long illness. I'd waved at him over the years but never had a real conversation with the man. He kept to himself. Most folks thought he was grumpy. I always thought he just looked tired. He stood up when I pulled into the driveway. He had a cardboard file box in his arms. The kind office workers use for storing papers. "Daniel," he said. His voice was rough, like a man who didn't talk much. "I've been waiting for someone like you for 14 years. Can I come inside?" I made him tea. Eleanor came out of the bedroom in her robe and sat with us at the kitchen table. Walter set the file box down between us and opened the lid. "Margaret had Parkinson's," he said. "Patricia did the same thing to us in 2009 that she tried to do to you. Different rules back then. She wanted us to use a contractor for a stair lift. We refused. The fines started. The complaints started. The threats. Margaret got worse. I didn't have the fight in me by then. I paid them. I paid all of them. By the time she died, we had paid that HOA over $28,000 in fines." He pulled out a thick stack of papers held together with a black binder clip. Every fine. Every notice. Every certified letter. 14 years of one man quietly building a case nobody had ever asked him to build. "I always figured one day," he said, "somebody would come along who was strong enough to use this. I'm sorry I didn't bring it to you sooner. I didn't know if you were the kind who'd run with it or the kind who'd pay and stay quiet, and I'm too old to be wrong about people anymore." I looked at Eleanor. Eleanor was looking at Walter. Her eyes were wet, but it wasn't sadness this time. She reached across the table and put her hand on his knuckles. "Walter," she said, "we're going to use every page." And outside, somewhere far down the street, a single porch light flicked on. Then another. Then another. Like the whole neighborhood was finally remembering it was still alive. The first reporter knocked on our door at 6:45 in the morning. The second one was already on our lawn. I'd been warned this might happen, but I wasn't ready for how fast it moved. The federal indictment had been unsealed at midnight. By breakfast, the story was already running on every local news channel, and by lunch it had been picked up by the Associated Press. The headline was always some version of the same thing. HOA president and husband charged in multi-county elderly fraud scheme. Wheelchair ramp chained. FBI moves in. Eleanor refused every interview. She told me, very gently but very firmly, "Daniel, I am not a poster child. I am a person. I am tired. You can speak. I cannot." So I spoke. Once. To a single reporter from the local paper, a woman named Joyce Tran, who had been writing about HOA abuse in our region for almost a decade and who came inside, sat at our kitchen table, drank Eleanor's mint tea, and asked careful questions for 2 hours. I gave her my whole folder. The fines. The maps. The spreadsheets. The records Walter had brought me. The list of the 11 other families. That article ran on a Sunday. By Monday morning, our voicemail was full of messages from other victims. Not just from our county. From 3 states. Meanwhile, something else was happening on our street, and this part nobody outside Briarwood Estates ever saw. The neighbors started showing up. The first one was Mrs. Caldwell, the woman who had filmed Eleanor on the morning of the chain. She came to our front door with red eyes and a tin of lemon bars. She stood on the porch for a long time before she could speak. "I deleted the video the same day," she finally said. "I never sent it to anyone. I was scared of Patricia. That's not an excuse. I was scared of her, and I filmed your wife instead of helping her, and I have been sick about it for 2 weeks. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just need you to know I'm sorry." "I'm so sorry." Eleanor took the lemon bars. She didn't say it was okay. She didn't say it wasn't. She just said, "Thank you for coming to the door, Linda." That took courage. Mrs. Caldwell cried in our entryway for about a minute, then went home. The second neighbor was the man who had laughed. His name was Roy Pellman. He didn't bring food. He brought his toolbox. "I'm a retired carpenter," he said. "I'd like to fix your back fence. The one Patricia made you take down last summer. I'd like to fix it for free. And I'd like you to know that the laugh on that morning was not the kind of laugh you thought it was. I was on a phone call with my brother. I was laughing at something he said. I didn't even see what was happening on your driveway until you were already inside. That doesn't make it better. I should have come over later. I didn't. I was a coward. I'm trying to do better today. I let him fix the fence. By the end of that week, 6 different neighbors had brought food, apologies, or both. 2 had asked if they could help organize an effort to dissolve the HOA entirely. Walter, of all people, said he'd lead the meeting. But here's where the story took its sharpest turn yet, and I almost missed it. A young woman knocked on our door on a Thursday afternoon. She looked about 25. Nervous. Holding a backpack with both straps over her shoulders, like a kid on the first day of school. "Mr. Hayes?" she said. "My name is Carrie Whitmore. I'm Patricia's daughter." I almost shut the door. I'm not proud of that, but I almost did. I didn't. I let her in. We sat in the living room. She wouldn't take the tea Eleanor offered her. She just kept gripping her backpack straps. "I haven't spoken to my mother in 4 years," she said. "I cut contact with both my parents in 2021. I didn't know about the fraud. I didn't know about any of the elderly people. But I knew my mother. I always knew there was something wrong with how she treated people who couldn't fight back. When I saw the news, I called the FBI tip line that night. I told them everything I remembered from growing up. I have boxes from when I lived at home. School things, old papers. There were documents in those boxes my mother didn't realize I had. Letters. Notes. A list of names from 2014 with dollar amounts written next to them. I gave it all to the FBI yesterday. She finally looked up. Her eyes were exactly her mother's eyes, but not cold. Tired. Sad. Honest. "I came here," she said, "because I read about your wife in the paper, and I've been carrying my mother's name around for 32 years, and I don't want to carry it anymore without saying I'm sorry to the people she hurt the worst. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know that not every Whitmore is a Whitmore." Eleanor reached for her hand. Carrie hesitated, then let her take it. "Honey," Eleanor said, "you're not your mother. You stopped being her daughter the day you decided to be a better person than she ever was. You came over here today. That's who you are." Carrie cried for a long time. Eleanor cried with her. I sat there feeling like the air in our house was finally a different temperature than it had been for 2 years. When Carrie left, she handed me a flash drive. "There's one more thing on here," she said. "It's audio. From 2017. My mother on a phone call, in our kitchen, talking to my father about a woman in another neighborhood who needed to be pushed harder before she'd sign. I recorded it on my phone because I was already starting to keep things, even back then. I never knew what to do with it. Maybe you do." I gave the drive to Agent Cole the next morning. The audio became Exhibit 47 at the trial. And the trial, as it turned out, was where the real twist of this whole story finally came out into the open. Because Patricia Whitmore had a secret even her own daughter didn't know about. A secret that explained, finally, why a woman with a beautiful house and a husband and pearls and a lawn care budget had spent her entire adult life destroying disabled people for money. But that's a story for the courtroom. The federal courthouse was 3 blocks of marble and bad parking, and Eleanor wanted to be in the front row on the first day. She wore a dark blue dress. Her hair was brushed back. Her hands were folded in her lap. I wheeled her to her seat and sat down next to her, and Walter sat down on her other side. Carrie Whitmore sat 2 rows back, alone, with a notebook open on her knees. Patricia walked in wearing a beige suit, no pearls. She had lost weight. Her lawyer kept his hand on her elbow like he was afraid she might fall. When her eyes scanned the gallery and found Eleanor, she stopped walking for a full second. Her lawyer had to nudge her forward. The trial took 11 days. I won't walk you through all of it. The financial part was complicated, and I don't pretend I understood every chart. But I'll tell you the parts that mattered. On day 3, the prosecutor played the audio from Carrie's flash drive. Patricia's voice filled that courtroom, sharp and confident, talking about an elderly woman the way a hunter talks about a wounded deer. I watched the jury's faces. I watched 2 of them look away from Patricia for the rest of the trial after that tape played. On day 6, Walter took the stand. 78 years old, in a suit that didn't quite fit anymore, he held up a single photograph of his late wife Margaret and told the jury, in a voice that didn't shake once, what 14 years of fines and threats had done to a dying woman's last good years on this earth. The defense attorney did not cross-examine him. He didn't dare. On day 8, the prosecution called a witness I hadn't been expecting. A woman named Dr. Helen Marsh, a forensic psychologist, who had been hired to interview Patricia after her arrest as part of her plea negotiations. What Dr. Marsh testified to was something none of us in the front row had seen coming. Patricia Whitmore had grown up in foster care. She had been bounced through 9 homes between the ages of 4 and 17. 2 of those homes had been physically abusive. 1 had been worse. By the time she met Gerald Whitmore at 22, she had taught herself one rule and one rule only. The rule was this: the people who get hurt in this world are the people who can't fight back, so make sure for the rest of your life that you're never one of them, and if you have to step on a few of them along the way, that's the price they pay for being weak. Dr. Marsh said it kindly. She wasn't excusing Patricia. She was explaining her. There's a difference. I looked over at Carrie. Carrie had her hand pressed flat against her mouth. She was hearing some of this for the first time. Eleanor was crying very quietly, the way she cries at the end of a sad movie, where she doesn't want anyone to notice. When it was time for victim impact statements, Eleanor raised her hand. She had told me she wasn't going to. She told me she had nothing to say to that woman. But that morning, in the car on the way to the courthouse, she had changed her mind. I wheeled her up to the small wooden podium. She had nothing written down. Patricia, she began, and her voice carried farther than I expected. I thought I was going to come up here and tell you that you didn't break me. I thought I was going to be angry. But I sat in this room for 11 days and I listened to who you used to be before you became who you are now, and I realized something I didn't expect. Patricia's head came up slowly. You and I were both little girls once, Eleanor said. We didn't choose what happened to us when we were small. But we did choose what we did with it after. I got sick. I chose to keep loving people anyway. You got hurt. You chose to hurt other people instead. That's the only difference between us. And it's a big one. But it's only one. She took a breath. I forgive you. Not because you've earned it. You haven't. I forgive you because I'm not going to let you live in my head for another day. My husband is going to push my chair back to that seat in a minute, and when he does, I'm leaving you in this room. Whatever the judge gives you is between you and the law. Whatever you do with the rest of your life is between you and yourself. I'm done carrying you. Walter is done carrying Margaret's pain through you. The 11 people on that board the FBI showed my husband, they're done too. We're all done. She turned to Carrie in the back row. And to your daughter, who is the bravest person in this room today, I want to say one more thing. The Whitmore name doesn't have to mean what your mother made it mean. You're already proving that. Don't stop. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear the wall clock ticking. Patricia broke. Right there at the defense table, in front of everyone. She put her face in her hands and she sobbed. Not a performance cry. Not a pretty cry. The kind of cry that comes out of a person who has finally, after 50-some years, run out of places to hide from herself. I wheeled my wife back to her seat. Walter was crying too. Carrie was crying. Half the jury was crying. The judge took a 15-minute recess. When he came back, the verdict came in the next afternoon. Guilty on 38 counts for Patricia. 41 counts for Gerald. Patricia received 6 years in federal prison and full restitution. Gerald received 11. But the part that stayed with me the most wasn't the verdict. It was something Patricia did on the way out of the courtroom. As the marshals walked her past our row, she stopped. Just for 1 second. She didn't look at me. She looked at Eleanor. She mouthed 2 words. "Thank you?" Eleanor nodded once. That was all. The marshals walked Patricia Whitmore out the side door, and I never saw her in person again. 14 months later, I was pushing my wife's wheelchair down our cul-de-sac on a warm September evening, and a little girl on a tricycle waved at us like we were the most normal people in the world. That, more than anything, told me how far we had come. Briarwood Estates is not the same neighborhood it was. The HOA was dissolved by court order 3 months after the trial. In its place, the residents formed what we now call the Briarwood Residents' Council. No clipboards. No fines. One rule, written by Walter himself. Be a neighbor first. Be a homeowner second. Be a board member last. Walter chairs the council at 79. He runs meetings like a kindergarten teacher with a heart of gold. People bring snacks. Kids run around in the back. Decisions happen by a show of hands. Last month, the council voted to fund free lawn care for any resident over 75. The vote took 4 minutes. Carrie Whitmore moved 2 streets over last spring. She works as a victim's advocate at the county courthouse and comes for dinner every other Sunday. Eleanor calls her our extra daughter. Carrie cried the first time, but she keeps coming back, which I think is the truest answer. Mrs. Caldwell brings us a casserole every other Tuesday. She has not missed one in 14 months. We give the extra ones to Walter. Roy Pellman, the man who laughed, started a free repair group with 3 retired tradesmen. They fix porch steps and stuck doors for any senior who calls. They call themselves the Tool Library. The 11 families on Agent Cole's corkboard all received restitution. 2 got their houses back. The other 9 got settlements. We're not close, exactly. We're the people who survived the same storm and recognize each other in the grocery store parking lot. Eleanor's MS has progressed. There have been hard months. The new powered van, the one she named Walter, has made her independent again. She doesn't need me to leave the house anymore. She still asks me to come along, and that's a different thing than needing. Last week she said, "Danielle, do you remember the morning of the chain?" Every second. I want this porch to be the picture you keep. The maple tree. The kids. The casseroles. Not the chain. I promised her. I'm keeping that promise. My name is Daniel Hayes. They chained my disabled wife for illegal parking, and they had no idea the FBI was watching. None of us did that morning. None of us knew the worst day of our lives was actually the first day of a different one. If you feel small, tired, and outnumbered by loud people who think their cruelty is just the rules, hear me on this. Keep your records. Keep your kindness. The badge comes for Patricia eventually. And if it doesn't, the porch is still waiting. That's the picture I'm keeping.